I'm like, this show, man, this show is pulling on my heartstrings already. Like, oh my God. So hello, Twist Out Baes. This is Adia, and you're watching an episode of Twist Out, Unraveling TV and Movies with Adia. So this episode, we are getting into some sci-fi weirdness. I thought we was there at Umbrella Academy last episode, but sweeties, we are diving deep into sci-fi territory with Lovecraft Country. Now, it is highly raved about. I know it is. People have been talking about it, and I finally got to see it. And the first episode, the start of the season just took my breath away. So let's get into this twist out.
This is the story of a boy and his dream. But more than that, it is the story of an American boy in a dream that is truly American.
Okay, so just a brief recap. Our main character, Atticus Freeman, known as Tick. Tick is a veteran, and he just left the Korean War, Korea, to come back to Chicago because his father is missing. You know me, I'm a Afrofuturist, sci-fi lover, but from all the advertisements that I saw, the first scene was super jarring because I was just like, oh, this is how we starting? We on a battlefield? There's an alien invasion? Like, I didn't know the story was starting off the bat like this. But really, he's actually was having a dream. But in that little moment, we see so much about his character. He has such a vivid imagination. Also, it shows that how much he loves science fiction. And when he wakes up, we see him reading a science fiction book, and he's talking about, it's called The Princess of Mars. The first scenes really establish him well. We know what his mission is. We know what he likes and why and what the basis of the show is. One thing that I felt was strong in the first episode was that even though we don't really see a heightened sci-fi moment until the very end, there's hints of science fiction and fantasy. There's hints of this throughout the episode, and it starts with Atticus. He is being so enamored by stories, by science fiction stories,
But I love Pope stories. I love that the heroes get to go on adventures in other worlds, to fight insurmountable odds, defeat the monster, save the day. Little Negro boys from the south side of Chicago don't notoriously get to do that.
Unless they join the army.
As a character, he's very smart, he's imaginative, but his intelligence is almost, he has this sixth sense where it's like he has such an awareness of his space. This is like 50s era, and he's so aware of him being a black man at this time. So that is one factor, but it's also like we learn later on in the show that this whole thing is about reclaiming a legacy and knowing what his mother's side of the family was like.
I know that, like your mother, you think that you can forget the past. You can't. The past is a living thing.
So he's come back because he's on some sort of quest, but it's not glamorous. So that's Atticus for now. So just as Tick loves to read and imagine himself in sci-fi stories and narratives, we see that his cousin Diana, she is actually an artist. And I like seeing her draw, and she's drawing in this comic book style. I felt so much like the sci-fi lover, the Afrofuturist lover in me loved that so much. And that a black girl writing that a black girl creating a comic book, that has such an imagination, an imaginative mind too. So when Diana is introduced, she's up and she is drawing a picture, and she's basing it from a picture she has of her mother, and that in itself is like a take on how representation matters, or how what we see ends up influencing the art that we make or what we put out into the world. I really grasped it when we see a little later in the show that the mom was using a telescope and being around her mom. And seeing her mom look through telescopes at night just to see the stars, she gets the idea to create a comic book of her own and base it on a black female, and to make the main character a woman, and to make it about the space travel adventures.
A Cynthia blue? Oh, pumpkin decided to change it. It's no big deal, Mom.
That was just another aspect to where the show brought in the element of science fiction and brought in how all the characters, literally all the characters, are connected to science fiction in some way. From the pen to the page, it was just there, and I so identify with that. The sci-fi lover in me, the girl that used to read and write comics, that girl, I felt she was represented in Diana. But I also felt that I was represented in multiple aspects, because the female dynamic in the show is up there. It is really good. I told y'all, I thought Allison's story on Umbrella Academy was giving us an instance of what the black female experience was like in the 60s era, but also in the civil rights movement. Now in Lovecraft Country, we're seeing an even greater aspect, an even greater view of what the black female role kind of is in the black community. Through Hippolyta's story, through Diana, and also through Letty so far. Yeah, so these are three main women, so I'm gonna talk about them a little bit. But yeah, so Hippolyta, she, as a writer, she transforms her husband's notes into the full book, really. And so she's saying, since I have this big role, let me go on the road. Like, let me do the things. And given the context and what we see later when George actually does go on the road with Atticus and Letitia, we understand why he would kind of say, oh, I don't know about that. We understand it, but also the idea of black feminism gets into the scene, and even kind of it's hinting at the sexism of the time. Even though George isn't necessarily a sexist, there are still a little bit of misogynistic bit of those ideas, and it's also that is talking about the time period that we're in. That at this time, women were struggling, and you a black woman on top of that, yeah, you were struggling, and there was struggles in your own community, where it's like you play such a significant role in the black community, but you're also still subjected to the ideas of what a woman can or can't do, and what you can or can't bring to the table. And I love that Letitia, she is such a force to be reckoned with in the show. Like I told y'all, my bustier is inspired by Letty. So I'm gonna get into Letty a little bit. Letty is, like I said, she's like a force to be reckoned with. She's not afraid to be herself. She's not afraid to have an opinion. She's not afraid to wear some quote-unquote short dresses and cute outfits in that time period that would have been considered like, what is she wearing type stuff. And so she has kind of just this fearless nature. She is a childhood frantic, and even though they haven't seen each other in years.
Only my friends get to call me that. You still friends?
Well, considering you were the only female member of the Southside Futurist Science Fiction Club.
I was. I was.
Rewatching the episode and hearing that, I was like, oh my god, like, oh, the show really is grounding that each of these characters touches sci-fi in some way. And on the broader scheme, all their lives touch this horror aspect, which is what we're gonna talk about a little bit later. But yeah, I love that he mentioned they used to be in a sci-fi club together. I'm like, this show is pulling on my heartstrings already. Like, oh my God. We see right there that she's unafraid to go into spaces where her being a woman would likely be an issue, but she's not afraid of anybody. And I love that we see when she finally gets on the road with Atticus and George, as they all got stops to take. They think they got stops to take. They go to many different towns, and of course every town is almost like the Wild Wild West. There's different freaking rules, but the main thing is Jim Crow is a big factor everywhere, it feels. And so they deal with this idea of space and time, that when they do get into a bind because they meet monsters in many forms, monsters that shooting at them, that are trying to hunt them down, that might want to tear their head off, when that's the real alien monster, gets them out of the bind. So there's this idea of feminism and sexism kind of rearing its head. Like, though, if the boys had just gone on that trip alone, they'd be dust. Like, without Letitia, she's alerted them that there's an issue. She hops behind the wheel and they just start booking it out of town. And that's not the only time she comes to the rescue in this story. If Tick's sixth sense in Power is that he has this awareness, like this heightened sense of awareness, hers is this ability to being unapologetic and also being unafraid of people and what people say. And I love the part where Atticus, when they are really in the deep shit, when they're really backs to the wall, they got to figure out a plan, because I'm trying not to spoil for you guys, even though I want to, but if you haven't seen it yet, I'm gonna let y'all do your thing. So when they're really in a bind, their backs are against the wall, so she's pushed into the position to really exert being unafraid and really exert rising to the occasion.
You don't even seem scared. Where they teach you that in the army?
I'm not scared, because fear's not gonna save us right now. You are.
That in itself, for it to be acknowledged that her work, her abilities, her Letty's power in this moment is not just accepted and not acknowledged, is not just accepted and as part of what happens. She's acknowledged for this, that she's saving them in this situation. And that is, I'm sorry, like, sweetie, that's remarkable. You may not get it, but sweetie, that is remarkable, because yeah, it's usually women are giving each other their flowers, when we have that insight too. But in a show, like, please, if you have another instance that is like this, where a black man too is saying to a woman, or a black woman, that you are saving us, you're the hero of the story right now, you're gonna get us out of here, and I thank you. Like, come on, tell me where you've seen that anywhere else. Put in a comment or something, tell me if you have, and I won't be so mind blown. But yeah, that is powerful, y'all. If you glossed over that, then please go rewatch that, because that has so many layered meanings. It lends to this idea that black women have been protectors in their communities, but has it really been acknowledged? Has it really been acknowledged in the wider circle than maybe your family or friends? Has that really been acknowledged? And so this aspect is huge. However this story unfolds later on, Letty is not the story's not going to be just the side character, or just someone that's going to be used to move the story forward, like her work is just what keeps the machine going. Like, no, she is put into the forefront as a major character, as a hero in the story too, just as much of her as her male counterparts. And I'm sorry, but that is huge. And I think that is, the show really is doing a fantastic job in that aspect, and I can't wait to see how this plays out more. So that is Letty being just super awesome. That we're also, there's other hints of reclaiming space-time and reclaiming that sort of characters get to tell a story. So as I finish the rest of my hair, I'm going to talk a little bit, because I think I've been touching on the idea of genre, my idea of the show reclaiming genre in the show, but I just want to touch on it a little more, because obviously the show is called Lovecraft Country, and so the author, H.P. Lovecraft, is very much, it's not just the title, his presence is made known in the show.
I haven't even gotten to the strange part. The place he wants me to go with him is in Lovecraft Country.
And his presence is not just mentioned, and it's not necessarily just celebrated. It's spoken about and discussed in a new facet that a lot of people are starting to bring into the forefront now in the conversation of his impact in the science fiction genre. The people are they're really realizing that a lot of his science fiction is based off of fear of the other, and that is obviously fear of non-white people. Lovecraft Country is really poking holes at the legacy of what his science fiction means. Our main character, Tick, has read his books.
Need someone here. Okay, I got you. Getting reacquainted with old friends.
Something like that.
Surprised that one caught your interest. Horror is usually my thing.
As a backstory, we get that the father was like, thinking in his head, there's no man to be celebrated. Like, why are you reading his stories? And so he tells him about his other work that is very much anti-black people. And so the show is very much dealing with that duality of the sci-fi genre. And the creator of the showrunner, Misha Green, and the author of the Lovecraft novels, Mark Ruff, have spoken in length about what the impact of Lovecraft's writing is and why they made the show. Mark mentions that sci-fi during this time period, of course black people were reading and loving sci-fi, and that is why we see Atticus, he devours this type of literature. It's a callback to that aspect that black people have always read pulp fiction. They've always read science fiction. This is not new to us, even if it feels new. And I know my own introduction to science fiction was Octavia Butler. To this day, she is my favorite author, and she is the woman, and she's the representation, like Dee and her mother, like Dee seeing her mother look through a telescope. Octavia Butler to me is that ancestor that started this sci-fi journey, and I wanted to model that, and that's how I started writing. So yeah, that is just my own example of how black people and people of color have been in this space and have been in this genre. And Mark himself says this was a genre that didn't love us back at the time. So one of the aspects that really opened my eyes to this H.P. Lovecraft issue was N.K. Jemisin. In her book, she talks about Lovecraft. She talks about how he feared the city of New York, but she's praising it. And so there's really this big discussion around him now, and how his work contributes to the canon. So I've twisted out my hair, and now I've put my hair up at the top. Since it's been so hot, my hair has been dry, so I really had to refresh and revive my look. So I used this Aquaman by Soultanicals, and it's like a leave-in conditioner. They call it an instant moisture potion. So I really used this to be my leave-in, and after spritzing my hair with some water And then I also used Sultanicals Can't Believe It's Not Butter it's a moisturizer to help again soften my hair and give it some moisture and moisture and stuff like that. And then I use Curly Chic's texture, Curly Chic Your Curls Controlled. So I used this gel when I was twisting my hair. And so yes, now we've moved into the section where I need to do my makeup and tie up my thoughts. Okay, y'all, I am done. This is the final look. I hope I'm giving y'all Lovecraft Country vibes with the reddish orange eyes and the reddish brown lip. So yeah, if you like this look, I used NYX Butter Gloss for lips. I used some of my Fenty Mimosa Sunrise for the eye, just to get that orange aspect. And I used Jackie Aina's Wigglies right here for the eye too. So I really like this look. I had a great time discussing this. I think the show is fantastic already. I think it's off to such a great start. Yeah, the wonders you'll see when you just step out of the perspective you're used to. So I'm so happy for this. We're getting some black sci-fi. So I hope you enjoyed watching this episode of Twist Out. Please stay tuned for my next upload, and please like, comment, and subscribe. So hold your edges, hold on your seat, because these videos are coming at ya. Okay, we'll see you on the next one. Bye.